Well, I'm joined now by Sami Hamdi from London. He's the editor-in-chief at the International Interest. Thank you for joining us. What is your reaction to these attacks that we have seen in Kabul today and just generally of the current security situation in Afghanistan?
I think it fits into this general theme that we're seeing in Kabul, this idea of chaos, this idea of a badly handled withdrawal, and also the uncertainty on the part of the Taliban in terms of the extent to which they're actually going to be able to exert control over Kabul. We've seen various negotiations taking place with tribal leaders and the like in a bid to form a government. But I do believe there is a dark tragedy and a dark aspect to what has taken place today, in that when Joe Biden tried to insist that his withdrawal was the right plan, because in his words, the role of the US was not to build a state, it was not to build democracy, but rather to target terrorism, and that he had succeeded in this. Today is a stark reminder of the emphatic failure of the US operation, in that if Biden's going to argue that the aim was never to eliminate the Taliban, but terrorism, it's become abundantly clear that they failed in the aim that Biden himself had set with regards to Afghanistan. But in an amoral way, and I ask you and the viewers to forgive me for saying this as well, for the Taliban, these blasts have created inadvertently a new position for them in the eyes of the public and also in the eyes of the international community, in that where the Taliban yesterday were the terrorists, today they're suddenly the partner against terrorism, where yesterday they were lumped up with Daesh and lumped up with ISIS as legitimate targets. Today we're seeing them condemn these attacks with the international community. We're seeing their names in headlines alongside Biden, alongside Boris Johnson, alongside Angela Merkel. The Taliban condemn the attacks that are involved today. And in fact, these blasts, far from undermining the Taliban, it may well turn out that what it does, it accelerates an international necessity to recognize the Taliban, to deal with the Taliban, and then work with them against terrorism. And this will be the legitimacy with which the Taliban will be recognized, much in the way that other organizations in the region have been recognized in times in which their legitimacy has been questioned, but has been cemented as a result of their utility against terrorism. So I think there's various different dynamics in the way that we're looking at it. But I think the most uncomfortable dynamic for Biden is not necessarily that he has to work with the Taliban. I don't think Americans are very interested in whether he works with them or not, but rather that his insistence that it was all about fighting terrorism and that US succeeded in this and therefore it's time to withdraw. These two blasts demonstrate that the Americans failed in every single one of their goals that they went to Afghanistan to achieve in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and doesn't this show that while the Taliban have taken control of much of the country, they don't have full control if there are these other groups who are vying for powers and that may take advantage of the current chaos or of this vacuum that might be created post-August 31st when US troops withdraw?
I think it's important to stress that even the United States, the global superpower, even Russia, the secondary superpower, and even China, if we're looking at it as the third or second superpower, struggle with insurgencies. They've struggled with guerrilla forces. They've struggled with these small terrorist cells that attack innocent civilians and bomb up these places and essentially are very difficult to manage, very difficult to control. So I think the reality is that while it's true that it suggests that the Taliban will struggle to impose security on Afghanistan, this does not necessarily mean the Taliban are incapable, but rather that the nature of the threat is something that even the US, the UK, and the European Union themselves have struggled with on their own home territory. I do think, however, that the Taliban process of achieving some sort of national reconciliation with Hamid Karzai, with Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, with Dr. Abdullah, trying to launch communication channels with the resistance elements in Panjshir, this idea of not repeating the mistakes of 1996 and trying to bring some sort of national reconciliation will help to establish a more stable security apparatus that can actually target these terrorist cells. Moreover, the fact that the Pentagon now are willing to work with the Taliban, the fact that openly it's no longer considered an embarrassment for the EU or for the US to work with the Taliban against these terrorist threats, this can only serve to shore up any lacks in Taliban capabilities in combating against terrorism. So the reality is that while we may lament the Taliban's incapabilities with regards to dealing with this security situation, in the eyes of policymakers, in the eyes of the actors, in the eyes of those actually involved in counter-terrorism operations, the view is that the Taliban are a viable partner to work with, and they will be working with them in order to tackle these terrorist threats.